So to try get this track back on track, I am going to attempt to do this without any speaker notes because it's going to take me 10 minutes to figure out how to set that up. So if I stumble or fumble, just bear with me and we'll go from there. But hi everyone. I also speak very fast because I'm a South African, so if I talk too fast and you can't understand me, if you just do this on your head, I'll know to slow down. I get really excited and overwhelmed and then realize I've spoken about 1,000,000 miles an hour and no one can understand me. But yeah, I'm going to be talking today about community hacks to enhance your career. So unfortunately, it is no longer enough just to be a great developer or great product manager or designer. You need to be speaking at conferences, committing to open source, writing blogs, engaging in the community, and the list goes on. And you're probably wondering why. Why is my technical ability not enough? Well, the short answer is a lot of the time, people who are making decisions about your career actually never see the work you're doing. I actually recently had a bit of a career change at Sneak where I work, and the person that made the decision about that never saw what I did, but there was a whole bunch of other things that they saw. So when they pushed, hey, Sam needs this promotion, hey, Sam wants this thing, he was like, I've heard that name. And so it was a lot easier for my manager to champion for me because I was a human they knew. You don't even actually have to be that good at your job. Now, I'm not suggesting you write bad code or do bad things, but you'll start to see about how growing your personal brand can really help you elevate your career. Now, as Carla said, my name is Sam Hepburn. I'm Director of Developer Community at Sneak. I do a bunch of other things too, because if you know anyone in community, we don't just do one thing. So I also help run a conference called DevOps UK coming up in May. Come along. I'm an advisor for OpenUK. I run a DevSecOps community called DevSecCon, and I lead the Java virtual user group. I've also led a lot of other ones that I'm not going to get into, and as Carla said, I won some fancy awards last year, so now I feel a little shiny and stuff. But that's enough about me. You can still stalk me on X for now. We'll see how long that lasts. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can also chat to me on the Discord server, so we'll stop talking about that. I do have a slight disclaimer. I am going to go through a lot in a very little period of time. You do not have to do it all. You don't have to be speaking at conferences, blogging, doing all of it. You pick some things that work for you and you run with that. I will cover it all, but you do not have to do it all. So what will I cover? I'm going to be talking about public speaking, because that's what I'm doing here today. Call for papers, blogging, community engagement, committing to open source, and how to find your next job with the community. So, public speaking. If the idea of standing in front of 10, 20, 100 people literally gives you a panic attack, don't do it. But if it is, what will I even speak about? Others know more than me. Well, this is something we can work with. And also, if you're scared, you can get over it. My hand's shaking. I don't know if you noticed that. It's still a scary thing. So, what to talk about? Well, have you ever been trying to solve a problem? You go on to Stack Overflow, you go on to Reddit, you go on to some human's blog, you eventually find the solution and you think to yourself, if only I knew what I know now. Well, there's your talk. There's things like, do you have good team dynamic you can share? What problems can't you solve? That is super interesting. These are the 5 things I tried to solve this problem and none of them worked. At least someone watching that talk is going to not make those 5 mistakes as well. And maybe they will solve that problem, and then they'll do the talk on how to solve the problem. Also, don't be too worried if you're not very technical. I'm not technical, and I speak at a lot of technology conferences. You can submit other talks. There's culture, there's methodology, there's how do we transition our teams. We've got the AI track now. So know that there are so many other ways that you can get involved that you don't have to be a technical expert. But talking about experts, if you're like, I'm not an expert, others know more than me, you're probably right. But if I use the analogy of, say I'm a startup founder, and I watch a talk by Google on how they made their first billion, that's interesting, but I'm a founder. I want to know how to survive my first year without going bankrupt. So you need to remember that everyone is on a different part of the journey. And we always look up the mountain. This person knows more than me. I want to be like them. And that's great, but know that there are other people coming up behind you that want to learn from you. It is okay not to be the expert, but it's okay to share what you know with the people who don't know. And you also, when you write your abstracts, and we'll talk a little bit about CFPs in a second, if you write it at what you're propositioning to show someone what they're going to learn, then they know, like, oh, actually, I know more than that. There's a bit of a junior talk for me. I'm not going to go to that. Actually, I know nothing about that. That's a great session for me. The other thing you want to think of, though, is when you are doing conference talks, you can actually submit the same talk to many different conferences. I have given this exact talk at other conferences. But the idea is that you always want to be getting feedback. The problem with feedback are humans are lovely. And if I say, how was the talk? Mostly going to be, it was great. It was wonderful. Because even if we're petrified of speaking, it's not actually as bad as we think. So invite people to your talk with the idea of giving you feedback. But think about who you're inviting. So if I'm doing a talk for junior Java developers, whilst it might be interesting to have my CTO in the room, they haven't been a junior developer in a very long time. So their feedback isn't going to be on point for what I'm trying to do. Maybe your content you're confident with, but your presenting style is a bit tricky. You can invite someone to give you feedback on your presenting style that has nothing to do. It might be a full-blown Java talk, and they're like, I can't code Java. That's not what they're there to give you feedback on. They're there to give you feedback on your presenting style. So know that it's okay to invite a number of different people. Also know that it's really hard. And so if you're not ready to give a conference talk, you can think of, speaking at your local user groups, doing sessions for your team. You might also say to me, Sam, you know what, I'm not looking at becoming conference famous. I don't want to stand on stage. If we go back to the point of this talk, how do I advance my career? You might be looking for that next promotion. And part of that promotion is you need to demonstrate the ability to explain complex problems to a sizable audience. But you don't get the opportunity to present at your company all hands or your team meeting, and you're like, but if only you gave me the opportunity. Well, speaking at your local user group, speaking at conferences like this, will allow you to demonstrate that skill without having to wait for the opportunity in your day job. And that's true for so many different things that I'll cover here. So if you're looking and going, I don't want to be conference famous, know that you can use all these skills to advance your career and go back to your manager and say, fine, you've never seen it, but here's this talk on YouTube. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I've used the word CFP a lot. All a CFP is a call for papers. So the beautiful thing about the tech industry is it is not this invite-only elite club that people put together the conference agenda and no one can come. Most conferences have what's called a call for papers, and you can submit a talk. And they want to hear from you. People want diversity of content. They want to know what's going on. I, as I said, help run Devox UK. We get over 1,000 submissions for about 180 sessions, and we couldn't run our conference without individuals like you submitting because we want to keep ahead of what's going on. What do people want to learn about? What are you struggling with? So it's okay to submit. But now, how do I write a CFP? So I would say that your title is actually very important. Please don't write the longest titles. I'm not actually that catchy with my titles. You saw mine, Community Hacks. I try my best. You don't have to be clever about it, but think about what are you trying to speak about and what does your title say? Make sure it's catchy, but it is not inappropriate. Use the right humor. If you're worried about your humor or you think it's hilarious, ask your team if they do. And if your team looks exactly like you, maybe ask a diverse audience. It's not that you're trying to be malicious. Most of the time, people who say something a bit off-piece, it wasn't because their intention to offend, but they didn't ask a diverse group of people what they thought of their titles. And again, numbers go down well. 50 things in 50 minutes to get you X, Y, and Z, super easy. Do not, as I said, use sexual, offensive language, inappropriate. If you don't know, ask someone, but this is not how you grab someone's attention. Do not do this. Let's talk about abstracts very quickly. I also realized I don't have a time count, so can you tell me how my time's going? Perfect. Okay, so again, for abstracts, please keep this short and to the point. The amount of people who want to write the entire talk in their abstract, you're actually going to be marked. It's too long for the CFP committee to read. As I said, we got 1,000 submissions for about 180 sessions. We just want to know, what are the clear takeaways? What will someone get out of coming to your talk? And you don't need to be a leader, as I said. You just need to tell them what's in it for them. If you come to this talk as a junior developer, you will learn how to write your first Hello World code. Perfect, I know why I'm coming. Bullet points are your friends. Again, please don't make it too long. It will actually mark you down, unfortunately. CFP committees do try to read everything, but the longer the abstract, the more time it needs, and it is overwhelming. And again, as I said, run it past your team, your colleagues, your moms, your dads. Does it sound funny? Is it eye-catching? Would they come to it? You've got these humans in your life for a reason. It's okay to ask them. And people love giving their opinions, so ask for them. Last thing I will say, though, is please do not submit a product pitch, especially in the tech industry. We don't want to hear how to use your tool. Now, you might want your company to pay to fly you to a conference. So you're like, well, Sam, how do I do this? Because, well, my company will pay, but they're going to want me to talk about the product. So I'll give you an example. We've got a talk tomorrow. Brian Vermeer is doing it in the security track. He is part of our developer relations team. He gets paid to talk all over the world. Now, he is going to talk about security. If he does something that our tool does, he's going to do it in that environment. He's not going to demo some other tool. So if he's talking about vulnerabilities, he's talking about OpenSneak, but that's all he is going to do. He's going to show you how to solve a problem that you have, but if he opens up a tool, he's going to open up our tool. The same way I've told you I've worked at Sneak about 4 or 5 times already, but have I sold it to you? You might go look it up afterwards. So know that there are ways to get your company and your brand in front of an audience by solving someone's problem. We are no longer humans who see some advert on a billboard and go, oh, we're going to buy that. We want to hear from other people. And if I solve your problem, you're more likely to look up my organization. So product pitches go nowhere, and they will actually do less for you. You can talk about your company, but talk about it in a way that solves problems, not just is a pitch. Now, you might be also saying 30 minutes is a long time to talk. Funny enough, it goes really fast. But there's loads of other ways. One, if you look at our agenda today, or the next 2 days of this conference, there's lots of different length sessions. But you can also find it on conference website. So look on the website itself and see what they are looking for. I'm not going to go through every single different type of session, but I will tell you a few that I personally love. So if you've never heard of a BOF, these are one of my favorite sessions. They're about an hour long. There's usually a host that kicks it off with some experts in the room, but the idea is full audience participation. You can go and you can sit and listen, but you can also ask or answer questions. This is a nice way to start practicing saying things out loud with an audience without it being all about you standing on stage. Again, you can also answer the questions, not just answer them. Panels are awesome if you want to stand on stage, because you do not need to know the answer. You can invite a whole bunch of experts to join you on stage. They have to answer all the questions, and you get to ask those questions. You can then also, because it's something that you're interested in, can add your knowledge and know-how without the whole spotlight being on you. So a great one. Also, you don't have to prepare all these slides. You can just have a casual conversation, because the slides are what takes the long, even when they have nothing on them. And last but definitely not least is quickies or ignites, or there's a million different words for this. They're usually about 5 to 20 minutes. This is great to practice a short quick fire talk, or great if you just have, you're like, I want to teach someone X. I don't want a full 30, 40, an hour of fluff. I just want to show you how to do this one thing. Submit to that track. Then you know that you can just get your points across, get off stage. It's a moment of feeling awkward and weird, and it's done. I can tell you now that any confident speaker you ask on stage, they probably have a panic attack during, before, and after. I've never met some of the most biggest tech speakers in the world. None of them are content on this stage. So get on, get off. But again, never give up. As I mentioned before, we get 1,000 submissions. We got loads here for this conference. You will get rejected, and it doesn't mean your talk was terrible and you should never submit again and move on. It means that maybe you submitted a talk that's a hot topic that a lot of people submitted and someone else got accepted. Sometimes there's just not enough sessions. But again, reach out for feedback. See if your local user group would like the talk. See if your own team would like it. And again, you're trying to improve and iterate on those talks. But know that if you do not get accepted to talk at a conference, it doesn't default mean it was the worst thing in the world. But asking for feedback might, so with some of our talks, we never understand what's in it for the attendee. We've got to go back to the person and go, we like this talk, but what are you trying to get at? So again, get that feedback and you can iterate. But as I said, it is hard, and even if the 10, 20, 30 people in the room heard your talk, they're not the only humans that will need to learn from your talk. As I said, I've done this talk before, and I don't think any of those people are in the room today, and I'll do this talk again. But not everyone learns through conferences. Some people will only listen to podcasts. Some people will only read blogs. And so how do we take that really hard work and get that content to work for us? Well, I call this content recycling, and you should be doing this with everything you do, even if you're never going to speak at a conference. So when I write my talk, so I'm dyslexic, and I hate blogging. It gives me a panic attack. English might not be your first language. You're like, nope, I don't want to write in English. And again, you don't have to write in English. We run communities all over the world, and they speak in their own native tongue, and they blog in it, but you might want to. But know that there are friends, there's Grammarly, there's now AI that can help you clean up the content of your blogging and your written content. But you can start. So when I write my talks, let me get to the point, I actually physically write it out. And then I use that as a basis for a blog. If I did some research and I found the answer to my questions on Stack Overflow, wherever it may be, I can then take that information and write a blog. Now, don't think that you're stealing someone else's content. If you found the answer to one of your problems online, you can credit that person. Hey, Sam on Reddit answered this question, it was awesome, and here's a summary of how you can do it. Because people also learn in different ways, and the way that we structure our thoughts are different. One person can explain something to me, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And then someone else explains it, and I'm like, oh, I get that. That's not hard. And so we all learn in different ways, and it's okay to teach people in different ways. But again, it's recycle, recycle, recycle. Can you, if you research something online, can you invite the person who answered that question to your podcast? Can you put them on your blog? I read books, and I turn those books into conference talks. Not everyone's going to read that book. So I'm like, I thought this was interesting, and here are the top 5 things I learned from this book that you can then learn, and then we go away. So know that it is okay to recycle, recycle, recycle. Also recycle each other's stuff. If you're working for the same company or interested in similar things, I could write the talk and give the talk, and you can be like, Sam, I love community, but I am never going to talk. Can I take the content from your talk and write a blog for it? Please, by all means, I am never going to do it. It's not my jam. As I said, you don't need to do everything. But this is also great where the community comes in. So don't only think about this as blogging or speaking at conferences or all the rest of it. Think about it as, if you go online to answer a question, you will stumble across people asking very similar questions. Then eventually you find the solution to your problem, and you go off on your merry little way. And those lovely humans are still trying to figure out the answer to theirs. Go back and answer their questions. Yes, as I said, Sam might have helped you answer that, and you can credit them. But again, if we explain things in a different way, your way of explaining it might be the answer they need. You can then grow your profile in the community. And again, if we go back to careers, someone might say, oh, you can't get that promotion because we haven't seen your documentation skills. We haven't seen your ability to bring people together. You can use the community to showcase those skills, so you're not waiting for your boss to give you that opportunity, and they can't hold that against you. But also I'd like to say that speak to each other here as well. So the awesome thing about community is that, and the technology industry, is we don't have to wait for books to be published, for university degrees to come out. We learn from each other and the awesome speakers at our conferences like this. But there are also awesome humans sitting in this room. And so whilst you're here over the next 2 days, chat to each other. Yes, it's awkward meeting new people. I do it for a living and I find it awkward. But again, a few minutes of feeling a bit uncomfortable might be the person next to you who is looking to grow their team and you're looking for a job, has the answer to that problem you've been trying to solve for weeks on end. And that's why they're in the same session as you, is because they want to learn similar things. And so speak to each other. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Cool. We're going to do this fast. Cool. Getting involved in open source. So the open source community, and obviously we're here at a conference all about open source, to me is the best way to develop about any skill you want to develop for your career. It helps us improve the software that we rely on every day, and therefore it is the easiest place to get involved, because if you're looking at it and you go onto some sort of README file and you see a typo or a broken link, instead of just going on your merry way, committing that back to the maintainers and helping them fix what they're doing helps you to grow your brand and helps you to just make the world a much better place. What does it mean to contribute? So one thing I will say is you do not need to contribute code. You'll actually be doing a lot of maintainers, a lot of help contributing to other things. Code is important, but if you're trying to, if you're really good at planning events, why not plan a meetup or a workshop around getting involved in that open source project? If you enjoy designing, you can look at all their tickets and make a better sort of user flow to use it. If you like to write, you can look at their documentation. You organize, you can look at their duplicate tickets and kind of group them together and do better naming conventions. Obviously, if you do like to code, you can submit new features. If you like helping other people to code, you can answer questions on Stack Overflow, Reddit, pair program with people. And so there's loads of ways we can now start to demonstrate skills that will help the open source community as well as your own career. And again, if you get involved in this and help maintainers on that whole, you can't lead a team because you've never done it here. Well, I've actually led a team in this open source project, and here's my experience, and this is how well it's done. And so you can start to demonstrate those skills. To find your next project, I would say look at the code that the projects that you're already using. You're more likely to come back and commit time and time again if it's something that makes your day job or your life better. So yes, you can Google open source and find something, but the idea of looking at the stuff you're already using will be way more beneficial. I love this quote: open source is just a fancy term for treating the world's problems as fixable. I've got 3 minutes left, so what I'm going to say is recycle, recycle again. If you are committing to open source, if you're doing events, if you're helping with documentation, think about how you can use that information to turn it into a talk, into a blog, invite that person on your podcast. Again, see how you can utilize that content to make it work for you, because it is a lot of work, whatever you do. It's a lot of work to stand up here on stage. What am I doing with the content? It's a lot of work to write a blog. What am I doing with that content? And last but definitely not least, if anyone here is looking for a job, actually, how many people are currently hiring in this room? Never had that before. Okay. There we go. One person. As an employer, you're looking to grow your team. Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. So a lot of the time, if companies don't have to look through 700, how many people have ever hired someone in their lives? How many people loved looking through all the CVs? Thought so. So if I can just get the right person for the right job, I will do that. And so getting to know people in the community, whether it's conferences, meetups, open source, allows me to kind of jump the stack with that. Also, for you as a candidate, I don't know if you've ever done this. You go through an interview process and they paint this cookie color. Join us. We're amazing. We're so inclusive and friendly. And then you join on the first day and you're like, this is not what I signed up for. Well, getting to know people at communities, they'll tell you what it's like to work at their company, very frankly, over that beer at the party tonight, or whilst you're pairing on something in the open source community, and you can understand if that's somewhere you want to work at. But the last thing I will say is, listen to their words, not their tone. If someone's like, oh, I love my company, we get to do yoga every day, that's great. I couldn't think of anything worse than doing yoga with my colleagues. So whilst that's a perk for them, it's not a perk for me. On the other hand, they might be like, oh, I hate it there. They're the worst. They keep on changing everything. We've always got to develop with these new technologies. And you're like, oh my God, if I don't have to look at some legacy code again, I'd be so happy. I'd love to be a bit rushed off my feet for a couple of years trying new technologies. That sounds interesting to me. So just listen to what they're saying, not their tone. Because one man's treasure is one man's trash, another man's treasure, that thing. Is just remember that. And the last thing I will say is also people do referral bonuses. Recruitment agencies are expensive. So if you know someone working at the company, the worst you can do is ask for a referral. They can say no, it cannot lead to anything, but you're probably making them extra money. But I've been told to wrap up. So that circles back to the people making decisions about your career often don't see the code or the work that you're doing, but if they know and they're seeing your name, you can definitely advance your career. That's me.